Aqui é a Home Office 5521 Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Private room today is at 28 September 2021. We will advance something which indeed it's not for this moment, but we will kind of do things in a rush because you are at this feeling. Looks like that this is your sensation. We will try to work with the model offered yesterday and these days. It's not the econometrical model yet because we are doing the development this if it's possible, and it's something that we must think. I can't shit and have the model. I must think, eat the information, have the digestive process, and I will shit the model. Until this, I can have this from nowhere. So we will have on mind the model that we had yesterday, considering the distortion, and we will have the top in kind of a high level of education, considering that I have a second nationality as Portuguese. Despite all embarrassing situation, I have this nationality, and we have empty chair on NATO as Portugal, and I will use as a derogatory thing the way I had been using all this time. So we will have this on mind. Uh, the internal dot product is something that happens inside the internal space. This internal space is an environment in general, and this environment had the association by the relational property between at least two different elements and a general perception of things. But according with the complexity as development of our analogical world, we can observe that sometimes a single variable at analogical space can have a multiplicity of registry and create a lot of lines of as information communication and transference of signal. We have this quite clear at the e-commerce, and a unique single agents can do operations all around the globe and sometimes create a big problem against everybody, and we will not have anything as consequence against him or her or it, because sometimes it's a company, an entity, or not necessarily a company but an entity associated with a company with having the interest as creating noise or failures and have the utilitarian advantage by this, offering for instance fake items at the e-commerce or items that you consider authentic but indeed has a failure or a problem, any kind of vice inside them. When you do the use, you will blame the branch, or the immaterial logo mark that is presented at this offer at the e-commerce. But the company as platform that offer the e-commerce can do this. And this is the idea of the internal Dutch product. This, if we bring this issue to the algebra and the algebraic presentation of things, considering the rational argument as a sentence, it's an axiom. The name is axiom. It means that you have a premise, you have an argument linked with this premise that will form the axiom as result, which is an idea. This idea, it happens at the macro environment, for instance, at the macroeconomy, as a premise which you consider by a single individual as economical agent. This is named topoi. This topoi, of course, that happens and had been going in areas which has no interest in having the proper internal control. at least since the neoliberal speech at the 90s, considering all things that we have. And the movement, which is a big failure that now is spread around, at least as a second or third attempt at the West, and of course that will create the same problems which will be integrated with previous problematic events that happens in very specific areas on Europe. It means the center and the heart of the Europe. And then we observe that the idea of having the economic and financial control to block this kind of continuous association as internal dot product oriented and with a sequential design by failures and vices will go with the success that indeed we achieved and had controlling the interfaces, which implies the budget. And then the evaluation will be maybe something that you can decorate little by little, avoiding the fusification or having the very crude taxonomy of this fusification turns the heteroscedasticity as economical stimulus and signals, which is a frequency of reading the environment, into a homoscedasticity, which is the idea as top point. And then we will check the model and the effort that you have, that you are doing, considering your accusation by corruption, criminal association by internal dot product with structural design as transnational organized crime, cluster of criminals interconnected by concurrent field of interest as white-collar crime, tax evasion, financial evasion, all corrosive arguments inside an internal environment, which is a consequence of the do not have the proper interest as controlling this kind of activity, considering the top level as top-down corruption scam, law and order movement 80 New York, concerned with the bottom 2021 Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, concerned with the top. And then the approach by both has an interface named tactical level. We put the FBI inside, and considering maybe a global company, and have the success that indeed we have. And this will bring the issue as piracy violation of all things, considering the violation that you are doing right now and since a long time ago against this research. The most proper word to qualify the Brazil as institutional behavior from variables inside which do not must and deserve be confused with the dignity of the institution is cowardice, at least. Then we will check that the pattern as organizational behavior of the transnational organized crime indeed is something going like this, as something as distribution, as hierarchical distribution with approach of failure centering the interest as an internal dot product inside this environment of institutional distribution by geopolitical power. We have this in Brazil, 7423 item 1 of our constitutional failure all duties. By silence starting of our criminal law, not proper interest in having the dismissing procedure, which indeed put the bottom of the transnational organized crime out, then we are firing the clouds and having criminals dropping inside a boat, inside a jail, and you must consider have the prison, it's necessary. Then we have the distribution as lines, in the same way as pattern of interest, lines and columns give me the idea of traces that I will research and persecute or have the target as main premise from international area, not related with criminal scams, to have the factorization of system of justice around the globe not considering the international criminal court or other areas with some kind of problematic, I would say, structural design to present solutions in a complex environment. Because sometimes we have the density as capacity decreased and then will be impossible to offer solution. Then we will check that this is our environment. A square, we have a circle as line. As you can observe, this line is debugged by lines and columns set in division or segmentation. They can use the first liquidity trap considering the interest as linear behavior, the projection as gain and the exponential behavior, and then I will put everybody projected down and I will take advantage of your grid. But sometimes inside this scam, I doing this as part of the internal control or the international glitch or something like this, with failures inside or maybe testing this model, and I will reduce and will do things in a rush. Despite I do not like to do things in a rush, I prefer do things in a calm and cold way. You know, kind of targeting this derogatory check on it. Then we will reduce the time. This is the idea of the database sequence approach, considering a higher, bigger space, I would say, to have the situation, and I can put this in a minor space. It doesn't matter. I will change the target, which is the regular development of your criminal activity. Then we will check that this division, which indeed we have here, is presented as something like this, which is the history as thematic panel distributed around the globe with crimes inside each one of those thematic panels. Let's suppose the thematic panel World Health Organization, crimes as investment, crimes as transfers, crimes as tax stimulus, A, B, C, but always need an interconnection gateway or interface to have the transference as flow, as stimulus, as signal. Get this, you will probably have the information needed by you to do not consider the circle zone as a global organization of the legal system by projection Fibonacci, considering the micro conjuncture as one specific country. I would say Brazil, for instance, that has a constitution and indeed it's a square. Projected by Fibonacci, we could observe that the international environment for sure has a square as premise of activity which does not get along with corruption. Then we will check that every time you set a thematic panel, you set a portfolio of criminal activity and the variance of criminal, linear behavior, exponential behavior. We could have this at the blog in the same way. The distribution of failures, considering the continents that you have around, will have this circle area inside the square highlighted as the color, highlighting, and then we have the positive one and the negative one. It's very similar, equal, similar. 0, 0, positive one, which indeed is the real criminal. Then this will allow me to understand the control model presented at the blog as support to the America which is doing things in a rush, considering that the bill as a structure, infrastructure bill that you are trying to transfer and assume by the occupied chairs at the public department. And you have a society with unemployment or risk as continued because it's exposed as your vulnerability, our vulnerability. And then you will assume this by the public chair and you will transfer this bill for the society paid by the taxation with corrosive argument as white collar crime, tax evasion, and financial evasion. Sometimes you pay more tax on China than America. Then you will have as result, summarize the entire thing, all in all, the exploitation and the expropriation of the private property, especially the middle class, and people that in general work to pay their tax regularly, and indeed they must pay because the rich people will commit the tax evasion, the poor have no money to pay. And this is your great idea. So we will have that the control model is based on signatures, a signal codified by area, which indeed is not the geopolitical area yet, because we do not have the distribution of power. It's a premise as geographic distribution. Security Forum Brazil USA, America 1, state A up to Z. In each one of state, you will have the association of seats A up to N. As you can observe, the state A, seat A, will have the association with other seats that do not belong to the jurisdiction of the seat in America, because you have this, but belong to the area's jurisdiction of state, which all belongs to the area's jurisdiction of America. In the same way, Brazil, state Rio de Janeiro, city Rio de Janeiro, city Surf. It's not part of the city Rio de Janeiro, but it's part of the state Rio de Janeiro, which has jurisdiction, full of criminals inside and a lot of problems for fraud contracts in all institutions, unable to present the tax evaluation, and of course that if you have the purchase of vehicles and every kind of acquisition on public budget, Brazil in all levels as city, we have 5,000, states 27, and you one unique federative union, you will have frauds on public budget distributed and associated with companies. If you have the purchase of a car, all cars will be under the overprice scam, reviewed as Operation Third Wing, FBI. You know, the regulatory chair, NATO, Security Forum Brazil USA. Then we will have the database Sigma Comparative Measurement help me to understand that this is the analysis that we did before, and I didn't have a new analysis because indeed I do not have my econometrical model yet, which is the risk analysis. Liquidity money curve at laundry scam still fail, and they still fail for sure because corruption affects all equally. And then the production of money based on the concurrent interest as inflation taxation indeed will set the exponential behavior of the corrosive argument inside the area, and this area is the area that has the switched value as development of your economy. If you are not having the development of your economy, and considering that the criminal result is not economic activity because it's not part of the science, it's something made, against the things, including the development of mankind, but we will be affected in the same way by corruption, as you could observe here. And we will check that the database sigma function density capacity increasement of failures or reduced autonomy and independence to have your reason and present your argument, especially considering the law and the constitution of your country that you must respect, but you are unable to do this if you are subjugated by vices, by corruption, by criminal association with everybody or anyone. Then we will check that it doesn't matter which will be the density of the second value at this functionality, because indeed we have the negative value as premise, the result will be negative, except if you put a negative value here and then you have maybe a positive result, and indeed we have this as presentation of function density alpha 55 Brazil up to sigma preventive control to do not have the integration as conjuncture full of states, full of seats, as internal dot product, as association or axiomatic structural design of the criminal organization in global scale. We will not have this. Then we will check that the positive value and the 00, the 11 and the 00 as top point, regular area, criminal area, indeed will be affected by corruption, because the corruption on the regular area will be presented as something that is not fully filled by traces. Indeed, it's equal to the crime as real criminal. But when they got associated, if this guy here is not fully filled as a criminal, he will take the integrity of the criminal. And then we will check that this value here will be -1, -1 result positive. Brilliant as usual, but it's not the econometrical model yet, it's the help to the Americans. And I'm not American. Your fail still remains. Have a nice weekend.